Hello and welcome to the Gambit Guide. Today we continue the second part of the Latvian Gambit. The dangerous opening which could happen after e4, e5, knight f3 and f5. So in the first part I showed you the greatest examples of how black could develop his initiative in this so sharp opening line. Indeed, after the Second World War, one of the greatest Russian players and later becoming world champion Vasily Smyslov played one of the games which put the big question mark on black's position in the Latvian Gambit. So in his game against Mikhail Kamishev from Moscow Championship in 1945, Smyslov immediately played knight xe5, and after queen f6, one of the strongest continuation which even today considered as the best. Despite the fact, of course, black could play also queen e7 or knight c6, which of course we studied in our previous lesson. So queen f6 today considered as the best move. So black is trying to win back the pawn on e4 by counter-attacking of the white's knight on e5. So what is the weakness of this queen f6 maneuver? According to our rules, usually we say that it's quite dangerous to develop our queen too early. That queen is so great target and could be under fire of all white minor pieces and of course pawns. And after queen f6, white has two, I would say, principal answers, because white also could protect this knight after d4, and in that case after d6, knight c4 and f takes e4, despite the fact black is still having some problems, queen is ready to go to g6, then knight comes to f6, black somehow protect his e4 pawn, and by playing next bishop e7 and short castling could complete successfully his development and to bring the king in the safe place, after which it's not so easy for white to reach any serious advantage. So Smyslov choose here not to play knight c4, not to play d4, but to play knight c4 instantly, intending just to break the black's position very fast after f takes e4. Knight c3, intending the e4 pawn, and now after queen g6 he played d3, move which I would say shows complete different understanding of the problem of development. So instead of going for the material like Capablanca did in the previous game with queen h5 and capturing the pawns on g6, etc., today's, I would say, modern players more care about the development of his own pieces and try to play for the development advantage. So Smyslov is ready now after e takes d3 and bishop takes g3 to sacrifice even another pawn on g2. Suddenly it's very, very dangerous for black. After queen takes pawn and queen h5 check, black is almost in losing situation already. White has so great development of all his pieces. This position just a bit reminds me the classical ideas of the Danish Gambit. So here after g6, queen g5, queen e5 check, king d8 and bishop e4, black is just losing immediately since there is no way to protect his hanging rook on h8, and of course the position of queen on g2 just cannot help black to save the game. After a move like king d8 or king e7, bishop e4, I don't see the normal way for black to save his queen on g2. let's say after knight f6, white simply could answer bishop g5, and black is still losing by pinning the knight on f6. So definitely black has to find some other continuation, but this idea of d3, trying to open the position and to send more phi on the black's queen is a quite difficult way for black. I mean, it's very difficult to find here the good way for black to contradict this strong idea of Vasily Smyslov. So after bishop b4 and bishop d2, bishop takes c3, bishop takes c3, and d5, white choose here to play knight e5, and after queen f5 and d takes e4, queen takes e4, bishop e2, still continues the same idea. The black's queen in danger, white is just intending short castling, and bishop is coming to f3. Black's king is still stuck in the center. A lot of dangerous threats white has in a different directions. Black choose to move knight f6, short castling, c6, trying to protect the center. Still, it was much better, of course, to play short castling, but even there, white is keeping clearly better position. After c6, bishop h5 check, black even has no chance to finish his development. King f8, rook e1, queen h4, and I guess that black believes that very soon, after let's say knight d7 or bishop f5 or knight e4, he could save his position, but suddenly Smyslov, of course, destroyed black's position immediately with a nice tactical shot, which quite difficult to see, of course. Bishop g6, the bishop cannot be touched because knight takes g6 and queen on h4 is gone. At the same time, white is intending just to attack black's queen, and after bishop b4, black's king already will be in the mating net. After knight a6, queen e2, so white is just changing the front of his attack, intending knight d7 discovery check, and next queen e8 or queen e8, queen e7 or even queen e8. Still, black cannot capture the bishop on g6. After bishop h3, the last try for black to complicate the game. Now, in case of capturing, black has saving check on g5, but at usual Smyslov moves, so Smyslov always tried to avoid any complications and just to find the most simple way to decide the game. And even in this position, he just moved his knight back after knight f3, creating the dead threat. Queen e7 with additional checkmate. For instance, after queen g4, black is threatening the checkmate in one, but white's checkmate is just coming first. Just 17 moves and black's position was completely destroyed. So this game, as I said before, put a very big question mark on the future of the Latvian Gambit. And I could tell you that for many years, this opening line just was in darkness, and black only from time to time used to play this sharp and aggressive Gambit opening. Indeed, in early 19 and even in this century, so this position become slightly more popular, and on intermediate and in some advanced level we could find some games with a bit more improved position after e4, e5, knight f3, f5, knight takes e5. First of all, one direction, black started to play queen e7. So which once again just invites white to play queen h5. After g6, knight takes g6, queen takes e4, king d1 and knight f6, black is gaining very good position. More to say, move queen h3, loses immediately after knight g4. So white is under threat, knight takes f2, and the checkmate have to give material for nothing. After d3, knight takes f2 check, king d2 and queen d4. Black is also attacking the queen, rook, and the same way knight on g6 will be captured very soon. And queen e3 doesn't work in that case. After capturing a knight g4, black's knight is protected and the white's knight is gone after h takes g6. So the game is over. So it means that after queen takes e4 check, king d1 and knight f6, white has to play queen h4. This is only way to keep the defended position. Still, knight g4, d3, black is having very strong reaction. H take g6, sacrificing the rook for the strong attack on the against white's king, which, as you can see, still in the center. So white has to accept the sacrifice. Check on f2. Check on f4. Queen takes c1, check. King takes f2, and just simply bring the knight in the center after knight c6. Suddenly we can realize that black's attack is very, very dangerous. After g3, f4, black is intending just to play queen e3 check, bishop g2, queen takes c2, king f3, queen takes d3, king takes f4, d5, white's king just cannot be saved. And I would say this line with queen e7 a bit reminds me the Traxler counter gambit, which we already studied in our games, in our lectures, so in our Gambit guide. And the very typical idea when black is just ready to sacrifice all his pieces just for one and important target. White's just absolutely lone king, which can be protected since all white pieces are totally undeveloped. Look at white rooks and knight and queen, which is on the side of the board. So after d5, the game is finishing very fast. Rook e1 check, king f7. So now black is intending already bishop d6 with a check. So white has to play queen h7, at least force black to play bishop g7. Still after knight c3 and g5, king takes g5, queen takes h7. So black is just winning the material. And if white is playing immediately knight c3, that we can play bishop d6, but of course g5 is more precise. King takes g5, queen f5 check, king h4 and queen g4, and this is already as a checkmate. Of course, in case of queen e7, white has better alternatives. So white could play immediately d4, and after d6, knight c4, f takes e4 and knight e3, taking more control over the d5 square, and then to play c4 and knight c3, and then bishop e2, and slowly later on to open the position in the center after f3, keeping slightly better position. Indeed, even on serious practice, I found a few games which were played with this great Latvian Gambit variation. So let's say how black started to react on Smyslov's idea. After queen f6, knight c4, f takes e4, and knight c3, it's not necessary now to play queen g6. Black found that move queen f7 still allows to keep the idea d7, d5. White cannot capture on e4 since pawn's fork d5 brings black material advantage. After queen f7, knight a3, and knight f6, white has to play extremely precise. So in that position, only bishop c4, queen g6, and f3 remains better game for white. In the game between Tilichev and Surikhin in Tomsk Izmailov Memorial 2008, white chose to play d3, and after bishop b4, bishop e2, and d5, the position becomes very, very complicated. D takes e4, knight takes e4, and black got quite strong counterplay, since after short castling, black has bishop takes c3, destroying white's attacking potential and getting quite good position. B takes c3, knight takes c3. So of course I would like to draw your attention, because black's king in the center, we have to get rid of white's pieces. For instance, after queen d3, knight takes e2, queen takes e2, and short castling, black is even getting a better game, since I don't see any clear compensation for white's lack of material. So white is a pawn down. And of course, white could play more solid bishop d2. Still, after d5, knight takes e4, bishop takes d2, knight takes d2, and here even short casting, even d4, keeps black with quite strong compensation for the pawn, for instance. And later on, black could develop bishop here, rook on e8, queen could go to g6, attack white's position on the king side. The position of white's knight is very passive. Despite the fact white is having extra pawn, it's quite far here to call that that white easily could realize his material advantage. Also, I could recommend you here, after bishop d2, also move like e takes d3, bishop takes d3, and short castling. No, not immediately, of course, short castling, so maybe first to play d5. And then maybe short castling. Still, maybe white is slightly better, thanks to development. But black's position could be playable in many lines. maybe we can start with even c6 and then to play d5 in order, short castle and d5, and then only then to castle short side. Okay, and finally, I would like to tell you that in 1992, in the European Team Championship, Ivan Sokolov, famous grandmaster from the former Yugoslavian Republic, and now he lives in Holland, played Latvian Gambit against the French grandmaster Manuel Apicella. I believe that in that years already Black was familiar with the Queen f7 ideas, which I just showed you. Because in that critical game, Apicella answered with d4, and after d6, knight c4, f takes e4, knight c3, and queen g6, bishop f4, knight f6, queen d2, and bishop e7. So black is now ready to castle short side, and once again, as I said before, maybe to bring all his pieces into the center, and then even to play d5 at right moment. Long castling, short castling, so games become very, very complicated because white would like to attack black's position on the king side. h3, intending g4 and then g5, trying to win this e4 pawn. a6, d5, knight bd7, king b1, and the game becomes very, very interesting. Ivan Sokolov chooses to play b5, knight a5, knight b6, so try to counterattack white's position of the pawn on d5. a3, knight fd7, and got quite promising position since bishop is coming to f6, maybe this knight is coming to c5. The light square bishop could be developed to d7. After the 35 moves, black even achieved the victory in this very complicated game. But I believe that Ivan Sokolov just like the course of this gambit, just to keep the position very unbalanced from the opening against the white's attempt to find the way how to get the development advantage is so a dangerous opening line, which we call the Latvian Gambit. So I can tell you that even today, so the Latvian Gambit from time to time we can meet in the tournament practice and even in quite serious tournaments. And I guess that from all the games which I showed you in these two lectures, you could study a lot of interesting ideas and could surprise your opponent, continue surprising your opponent, and include this Latvian Gambit, if not in your tournaments game, that at least in your live games on ICC during your games against your friends. Okay, so by this second part about the Latvian Gambit, I would like to finish the course I would like to thank everybody for watching the lesson about this historical and interesting Gambit line. If you have any question, you can contact me on www.chesslessons.wordpress.com. I will answer all your questions, and if you have some games which you played with the Gambit guide, I also would be happy even to upload it on my site and just to show your great ideas, maybe sometimes not without mistakes, of course, but we all make mistakes. And playing the Gambits, always you're taking some risk, but also your opponent has to play very, very precise in such an unbalanced position. Still, in the Latvian Gambit, we follow the main opening rules. So black is trying to take more control over the center by counter-attacking it. White's e4 pawn after f5, and just to bring all his pieces in the game and try to keep pressure over the white's position on the king side, usually on the king side. See you next time. Bye.